host of Earth is Our Witness, a new project that is about inviting great photographers with the purpose of inspiring creativity and compassion that ultimately connects us all. Today, we have a very special guest. But before we introduce the guest, I want to give a big round of welcome to our artist in residence, Art Wolfe. Art, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm kind of hybridizing tequila with art and Parimal with visiting with Nevada, but I've got a nice little shot of Patron tequila. You know, I'm so intimidated by Nevada and her career and her good looks. She's the complete package that I have to kind of take down my nerves a little bit with a little tequila.
Yes, and now with that, with a perfect segue, let's welcome our very, very special guest tonight on Earth is Our Witness. She is a cultural photographer, publishes, in many, many reputed magazines, including National Geographic, is a fellow of the Explorers Club, is a member of the Women's Geographic Society, the one and only and very beautiful, joining us from Santa Fe, New Mexico, Nevada Wier. So Nevada, welcome.
Thank you. And mine's down to here, Art. Mine's down to here. So
okay, well, I'll catch up. Believe me, okay. I will catch up.
I have no doubt. Well, what a pleasure. This is such a fantastic on live meeting that you've set up for everybody. So I'm really honored and very excited because Art, the last time I remember seeing you was when I was in India at the Pushkar Fair, and I heard this voice going, "Who's that white-haired woman in my picture?" And there you were up on some sand dune or something,
And, it is so funny that we would love to hang out together in Santa Fe or Seattle, but in fact, we randomly run into each other in this tiny globe, and it is really tiny these days, isn't it? Yeah, I remember that. Pushkar is a delight. I'm so happy to have you with us tonight. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And it's really exciting for me to talk about it's an ongoing aspect of my photography, working with infrared. So Parimal, just let me know and I'll start in.
Yes.
And of course, questions, you guys chime in. So yes. Shall I start out?
Yeah. For everyone joining both on, either on Facebook Live or YouTube, the way we will do this is we will get started soon. Today's theme is Seeing the Invisible, which it's through the power of infrared photography. And I got to admit, by no means am of the league of Nevada or Art or any, by not even close. But I've been doing photography for 20 years and I know nothing about infrared personally. So I'm very intrigued by this. And I want to learn more about what it means to do infrared, what kind of seeing happens as a result. And I think it's what a treat today to hear it all and learn, from Nevada. So Nevada, would love for you to jump in, share some images and the stories and kind of the process of infrared.
I want to interject right before you do it. Just interject one little thing. Nevada is showing a new trend in her work, but you have to acknowledge, just calling her a cultural photographer is not enough. She has led tours in remote areas throughout Southeast Asia for as long as I've known her. And she's a pioneer in that kind of travel photography in really, really remote areas. And so my hat goes off to her. She's very intrepid, so this is just a small portion of her vast variety of work. Now we can.
All right, thanks, Art. I appreciate that. Yeah, I am. I'm showing you actually from starting 20 years ago. So let me share my screen, and I will get started. All right, hang on. Get a little.
It's coming up.
You got it?
Not yet.
Not yet?
I don't see. I just see white. I don't see the image yet.
You don't. It says I'm screen sharing. Okay, let me start over again. All right, I'll stop the share. I'll share the screen.
I did a critique this morning with 8 participants and I was running into this. So just be
Okay.
very chill, be very chill. You'll get it.
You don't see it.
Kyle, come on up here and help
Can you
troubleshoot.
try closing it down, the application, and resharing, Nevada?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Because I'm doing what I normally do.
Yeah. If you
All
can
right.
stop sharing and then start sharing again. Let's see, because
Okay.
in
All
the
right.
quick.
I'm going to start again.
Yep.
And just
Okay.
totally be relaxed because we're happy to see you squirm. It's better you than
Better. No, I don't like, I like to be in charge of the technology. So yeah, wow. All
I've
right,
got
let's try one more time because I
Coming up.
use.
And if you can go in slideshow mode, like if you
like
play.
this.
Hang on a second,
So what
because
do you
we
think?
tested this.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in screen sharing on the right.
Do you hit the play button?
Yes, of course I've hit the
Okay,
button.
you did. I don't see it.
All right, I'm going to start over again. Share screen, keynote, share.
There you
Okay,
go.
we got it. We got it.
Oh, okay. That's what I've been doing about 5 times, but here we go.
No, what
We got
happened,
it.
I'll tell you what worked is Art had a sip of tequila and suddenly it worked.
Well, that's because it's about the invisible and seeing.
There you go. That's very good.
And I do call it visual poetry because everything we think we know is really only perceived by our senses, right? The sounds we hear are just waves in the air. Colors are electromagnetic radiation. Your sense of taste comes from molecules that match a specific area of your tongue. Nothing is really how we perceive it. And when we look, we're so used to seeing in the visible light range, which only is about 30% of the light that comes from the sun. The rest is infrared and a little bit of ultraviolet. And it's for many animals, bees, butterflies, it's perfectly apparent to them, and they see in ways that we can't even begin to imagine. And so it became very philosophically interesting to me when I started thinking about infrared over 20 years ago, quite a long time ago, because it means that I'm only perceiving a fraction of the universe. So I think of infrared as revealing secrets. So I have to do I'm just going to, just a couple of minutes. I have to go into the technical just a little bit because otherwise you're going to come up with questions, but I'm going to keep it down to its briefest form because near infrared, because the infrared spectrum, if it was linear, is on the right-hand side, ultraviolet on the left. It's not linear, but let's pretend it is. It's just beyond the range of the human, the range where humans can detect with their eyesight, okay? So it depends on the length of the wavelengths, okay? And so in this very narrow sliver, somewhere in the middle of all those rays is a band of wavelengths that excites our retinas in the back of our eyes, and that's known as visible light. And so we associate these different wavelengths in this range with different colors. And in daylight, about half, 48 to 49% of infrared is in sunlight.
Ooh.
I started in infrared in 1997. I actually was a black and white photographer. I had a dark room, but I didn't really know about black and white infrared until I had moved on to color. And I worked for over 10 years in this Kodak EIR Ektachrome film developed in the 60s. It's a false color reversal film. All the colors are different, very sensitive. I had to have a black bag going through the x-rays. And I worked with this for a long time. I mean, from 1937, there were like 33 different types of black and white infrared films available from 5 different manufacturers. And I think there's only 2 left now. Ilford and Rowley, I think, have some black and white left. So at the same time that this film disappeared, you know, I went into digital infrared, okay? And one thing you have to understand is the wavelength, right? Again, look at this graph, okay? We've got this, this very narrow band of the visible light, a big one. Most people think of infrared going Silence of the Lamb, you know, thermal. That's far infrared. I'm working with near infrared, very, very close to the visible light spectrum. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going backwards, aren't I? Hang on. All right. So digital cameras are so sensitive to infrared light that manufacturers, they have to put a filter in front of the sensor to block infrared light from spoiling the regular photographs, right? So just in very simple terms, what I'm doing through a manufacturer like Kalari or LifePixel is they're removing this filter that blocks infrared and puts on a filter that allows infrared to come in. And depending on the type of filter they have is how much visible light is going to come through. So you're going to hear me tonight talk about 720 nanometers, 665 nanometers, 590. All that means is that I'm going from more infrared light coming in to less infrared and more color and less infrared. And I progressively have gone from less color to more color, as you are going to see. So I converted my first infrared camera in 2007, digital. Okay, I started in digital. Wow, with one of the first digital cameras. It was a Kodak 1 megabyte digital camera, but I went 100% digital in 2004. And this was the same year that Kodak discontinued their IR films. And infrared is, there's many people working in infrared. Ansel Adams is reported to have worked with infrared, but I don't think he really embraced it. Minor White actually was one of the first practitioners of infrared photography, I think in the 1955. And I think even Ouija was involved in infrared. And one of the things, Minor White was such an amazing photographer because he was so involved with the Zen of photography. And his perception was that one does not photograph something just for what it is. It's for what else it is. So it's not surprising that he got involved with the infrared. So here, I'm going to show you, I started with the 720, which is, allowing just a little bit of the visible light in. So you can see the difference. This is where we met, Art, in the Pushkar Fair. I don't know if it was the exact trip, but when, working with infrared means I have to switch my brain and I have to think about what I can't perceive, because since I can't see this light, particularly with the DSLRs. I couldn't see what was rendered on the sensor. I could only imagine. So I had to imagine what the infrared light did. And there was a different plane of focus. So it was a wonderful exercise for me, because I think photography so much is about, you choose a subject because it cathartically reacts to you. And then you have to figure out a way to interpret it, right? Particularly in travel photography, which can be so literal. And because I work for magazines, I became so literally minded that infrared took me out of that and took me into this realm of what you see something, but what else is there? Because
Can I interject?
Photographing what I can't. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to interject for a second. I think that's the absolute moment of creativity, when you start to have to pre-visualize what you can't see, but what it can be. That's the purest form of creativity right there.
It
and
is.
So, yeah, it's amazing.
And that's all we are, Art. We're just interpreting what we see, right? You can't rarely accurately photograph what you see. You can only interpret. And because photography gives you this much wider realm of interpretation, particularly digital, it's very exciting. And you do that in your photography also. So
But
here's
what
the larger image. Yeah.
it's so creative. It's so refreshing to see something different than the 100,000 images that come out of Pushkar every year, including mine. It's so refreshing to see a different way of seeing that. And so, my God, this is beautiful work. Really.
Thank you. But as Cartier-Bresson said, your first 10,000 images are your worst. And that's what it is with infrared, because talk about failure. I mean, between focus and all sorts of things, I had to keep experimenting. But isn't that the beauty of photography? Because people think, I mean, it's so democratic and everybody has a great picture at some point in their life. So you try to become consistent. But I tell you, with infrared, it's really difficult to become consistent because there's always these roadblocks to it. And, you're a painter, which I really admire because I have zero talent with that. So for me, infrared is the halfway between a blank canvas and visible light photography, because I see what I'm photographing, but I'm doing it. I have to render it in a completely different way. And I have to understand the physics and, the magic behind infrared. But there's so many unvariables. So that's one of the things I love about infrared, because it took me out of this very literal point of view.
And in this particular image, go back to that last image for a second. Mm-hmm. You're not only rolling the dice with infrared, but you're also rolling the dice with the exaggeratedly long exposure. So, oh my God, I'm sure there were a lot of failures in this shoot, but when you get something that you completely cerebralized and it comes out, it's like Christmas personified.
Yeah, and I love slow shutter speeds. I do invisible light. I mean, I love pushing the envelope. I handhold 98% of what I photograph. And so from film on, I learned to work with really, really slow shutter speeds. And I still do. And so I will, even though we can easily go to the high ISOs, I force myself to go down to the low ones because I like this feeling of motion and, if I'm lucky, sharpness within motion. So this one turned out particularly well because I was photographing through a mirror and there was plenty of daylight. But again, I have two cameras, so I'm constantly choosing, do I want this one or do I want this one? And, I'm used to working pretty fast. So I like these kind of situations. I like fast moving situations.
Where was this particular image, or do you not want to divulge that?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Where? What country?
This is Cuba. This is Cuba. This is one of the dance studios in Cuba. No, it's fine. I just don't like the countries. We get the country sometimes can overtake images, right?
You know what? One of the things that many of the audience may not know, that when you do tours or where you shoot, you keep that a secret. And early on, I always thought, maybe Nevada's a little severe about that. But in reality, you were ahead of your time, because there is a flash mob that will go and replicate everything. So forgive me for even asking, but Gab and I went to Cuba right after the Havana Social Club, I think it was called. Yeah. We went down there and we got arrested afterwards because we weren't supposed to be in Cuba. But I recognize the ballet dancers and the beauty of that. And I just wanted to confirm that. But anyway, you're right.
I get you. I'm fine with the countries. I just don't like to say the villagers or the people's names or things like that. But again, I'm not trying to say that. If people ask me how many countries you've been to, I go, I don't care, because I go over and over to places, because I've been to Myanmar every year since 1986. India, until recently, have gone at least 2 times a year. So for me, it's about the place, it's about the people. And like you said, there's a big past to this, but it's And that's why with infrared, for me, it's not a gimmick. It's not of, oh, I have to do it a different way to get ahead of somebody else. It's a challenge for me to see differently. And particularly when I started with SLRs, where you couldn't see through the viewfinder what you were doing, I was constantly imagining and I didn't know where the focus was. And it was very good for me to be not in my head because, you know, I know for you, the techie doesn't come easy, but it does for me. So this has been very valuable for me to shake me up, and shaking yourself up in photography, I think is really important.
Well said.
Well, I love the color palette that you're achieving in the whole thing. I mean, it's just beautiful work.
Well, and this is a very subtle, this is a little bit of visible light. This is what's called 720 nanometers, you know, just a little bit, 25% maybe a visible light on the red scale. And of course, as I say, infrared, it doesn't work with JPEGs. It's 1/3 photographing and maybe finding an image, and it's 2/3 processing. And as you'll see, as I progress, because I'm working with more color saturated images, it becomes, the post-processing becomes even more important. But I'm really glad I started with the subtle colors, the same way I'm glad in color photography, I started with black and white and got the foundation of contrast. Because to be honest, people have this misconception with infrared of, oh, you can photograph in the middle of the day. No, it's not that simple. You still have to understand how shadows and light and color works with infrared. So again, here you've got this slow shutter speed, which I really love. I love the mystical feeling. I love, one thing that's nice about infrared is the looking beyond. And that's become very important to me. And personally, I think there's very few people that can command a full frame portrait. Personally, I don't make many just headshot portraits, okay? I usually like to include an environmental portrait, but because of their endowment, they have an environment around them. And if this is in India, on the left, we have the Bagya tribe in Chhattisgarh, and on the right is the Dongriya Khan in Odisha. And I've been to these places numerous times. And again, it's learning how to photograph with infrared, what fabrics are going to reflect and turn white, like most synthetic, as opposed to woven, and eyes are really important. How do they work? Because sometimes they can look really deadly. Tattoos, because infrared penetrates about 2 to 3 millimeters into the skin. You can see you lose freckles and other acne and other imperfections, but the tattoos become remarkable. So they become it's become a great media for me to photograph people who have this type of scarification, penetration, scarification. And there's so many cultures around the world that, as we know, it's changing, it's vanishing. And of course, in our culture, it's coming back. And like in New Mexico, I've been photographing a lot of people in New Mexico with tattoos. So it's very interesting about this cultural exchange. But for these people, you know, this worked out really well with portraits.
So Nevada, I mean, you are to call you a cultural photographer is really diminishing who you really are. You are a total artist. These people do not look like this. You know, you are translating and capturing an entity that doesn't have light skin. They would more than likely have dark skin. They don't have blue eyes. You are totally becoming unequivocal, a very, very profound and, you know, beautiful.
You know, Art, I suggested the word cultural because I really don't want to be defined too much by these titles. I don't want to be called a National Geographic photographer or this or that. So I picked a very, you know, white bread one. But it's true because, you know, travel, I'm actually more of a traveler than a photographer. I love photography, but I love to travel. And that's been my as you know, from the very beginning, going out and about in the world. And up until recently, it's been a very amazing time period where you could go, very easily fly, take a Jeep, then you're with these elders who aren't going to be around for very longer. I know you've been photographing them, and it's extraordinary, and their stories. And for me, it's been on a very personal level about experiencing the world and experiencing these cultures, and of course trying to encourage the younger generation to tell their stories beyond me. That's another part of it. But as Chris was talking about, Chris Vernier, I mean, my gosh, what he talked about just a couple of nights ago, so important, his organization. And I do it on a very personal level because I really believe in recognizing people person to person, and I get very involved in the culture. And it's not as much about my assignments as it is about my personal curiosity. Does that make sense?
Yes. And so, I mean, these portraits are stunning. And I agree with you. Not everybody should be photographed as a portrait. But I love the rose hips above the lady on the gal on the left. I mean, it is stunning work. This is just amazing. I'm so happy to be looking at this work.
Well, and these are, most of the images I'm showing you are ones that I've labored over as prints, because to me, a print has to be a sculpture the same way a painting does. And it's one thing, and I do have some images that I cursory make for the internet, and they have a wow factor. But when I make a print, it can take weeks, it can take months, because I feel like I want it to be on the wall, and I want it to have 3 dimensions. So actually, in many ways, it's painful for me to see these as these little JPEGs, although I think they have a representation. But I feel like they're a faint reminder of what they could be as prints, because this was one of my last shows in Santa Fe a while back, and I'm actually working on a new one now. So I want to get to those images. But, I think you won't see these moments, whether it's visible light or whether it's infrared, you won't see them unless I photograph them, right? So when I photograph, whether those portraits, I want people to feel as if they want to be with me right at that moment. And when I was in Kaziranga in Assam in India, which of course I love India, I was on the elephant. I could, you can't bring very much with you. I brought one camera, a long lens, and I chose the infrared. And I'm not a wildlife photographer. I had one of those lucky moments where they went chasing, and it worked very well. And technically, yes, it did take me a while to process that, but that's for a workshop. But this is my best wildlife photography art. But
to have all 4 feet of that first rhino off the ground.
I know. It's, I have to say, this is it. You've done so much more.
I got a question. I'm sorry, Parimal. I'm just totally taking over.
No, it's good. It's good.
Go back to the last shot, really briefly. Go back to the last pair. I want to ask you one question.
Yeah.
The fly on the gal's shoulder, you intentionally left. Just tell the reason why.
There is no reason why. I first of all, I come from the old world of you don't remove anything. Okay. I work full frame. I don't crop very much. And to me, it is what it is. So I don't overthink things. Okay. So if there's a fly, if there's a piece of trash, it's my fault for not seeing it. I'm not sure I saw the fly. Okay. It's today, but I'm not going to remove it. It's so real to that scene.
That's
it's so real.
Yes. Authenticity to that moment. Yeah. Everything else then becomes real because that fly could easily be removed, but you left it in, which cements the entire image.
It's not that I left it in. I had no choice. I don't take anything out. Okay. I don't sanitize at all. And that's my personal philosophy. It's not for anybody else. It's like keeping me honest, because honestly, I photographed until recently. I photograph so much. I have to have parameters. Okay. So for me, it's either in there, it's my personal vision. It doesn't matter later whether I like it. It's like now. And
It's
that's,
totally, it's totally a slippery slope, isn't it? Because if you
yeah,
remove the fly, then a blemish on the cheek, and then. And so I get it. I totally get it.
I just don't. And because I'm still vaguely in that photojournalistic world, which is the gotcha crowd, I learned really early on. And, I know you got slammed really early on for an artistic, move. And I just sort of go, come on, but uh, I'm a coward. I just sort of stay in the what is there. So,
No,
and that's,
it's not coward. It's just your philosophy, and a lot of respect goes along with that. Now let's move on because I don't want you
all
time.
right. Okay. I know. So we talked about this one. Okay. So now we're moving into a little bit more color. In the little left-hand corner, you can see 665 nanometer, which means there's a little bit more visible light. Okay. And, Aaron Siskin, he said he had a wonderful quote: photography is a way of feeling, of touching, and of loving. And so when I get into a place where I'm spiritually in awe, like I am in on my way to Zanskar in the Suru Valley from Ladakh, and I'm not a Buddhist, but I have to admit I imbibe the spirit. And being there, and of course, photography is this very wonderful combination of thinking and feeling and intellect and intuition. So I'm using a bit of flash, I'm using some technical considerations, but mainly it's about how do I feel about these prayer flags? And for me, being in infrared, because again, even though I started out in black and white, I'm a color photographer. In fact, I am 1% to 2% of women that see 10% more colors, which means, let's say the average human sees 1 million, I see 10 million colors. So I am, when I went from black and white to color, I'm Walt Disney. All right. So for me, working in black and white, going to infrared in black and white doesn't make sense. So it's going to make sense why I bring more and more color into my work, because I'm tetrachromatic, but like a butterfly is pentachromatic, right? And the color is so much part of my life. So I'm seeing this transformation of actual visible light color into infrared color into 665 nanometers, if that makes any sense at all. It's just, it's no surprise that I'm inching my way up to more color, and I'm gradually increasing more color into my images. And, I've always felt I go to these very iconic places like you do, and of course, other places that are not so iconic, but there's just very boring ways to photographing iconic places, right? For me, I have to make an interesting photograph of these very interesting places. I don't want IR to be a gimmick. And, actually everything is ordinary, depending if you're a resident or not. Okay. If you're a tourist, it's like, wow. But really, it takes a lot of looking and a lot of imagination to see differently. So stare, look, imbibe, listen, use all the senses, because it's part of it. So when I see a situation, I'm going, okay, I have an interesting place. How can I make an interesting photograph of these interesting places? And there's this horse, and I'm slow, and I'm on my knees, I'm moving over, and I'm Easter Island, of course, with the Moa statues. The eye is the motif, and I'm inching over and inching over, and don't move, horse, and a lot of internal thinking. I talk a lot to myself when I'm photographing. So I was really happy about this image, because it's not enough just to say interesting person click, interesting place click. I mean, I know you know this, but I
have to ask,
yeah.
Nevada, when we talked to Chris, he was championing pre-visualizing an image. Were you just taking simply an advantage of a horse being in the environment of Easter Island, or
Yeah,
did you?
how can I pre-visualize this? I have no idea if there's horses there. There's a
No, no,
horse there.
that's the question then. You
What?
didn't bring the horse in to.
No. I work very fun. I mean, there's a few things I might choreograph, like you go stand over here or whatever. But
Right,
I love the photojournalistic challenge. And I know
Okay,
Chris does also. But no, there was like, I'm looking around going, oh my God, what can I do? You know, I can't just photograph the moa. And then there's the horses. And then I explore, because the great thing about photography, whether you're landscape or people, is it's curiosity, it's exploration, it's what it's all about. And if I just pre-visualize and set it up, what's the point? I don't find any interest in that. I like to go, oh, that's possible. Now let's try, let's see. And then it's more of, okay, maybe that. And that's what I love about travel, because you can't predict travel. It's the great uncertainty, and you're unleashed from your cultural moorings, and you're doing things differently, and you think you have an idea, and then that's slammed away from you. And so for me, photography in these situations the same way. I can have an idea, but that's plan A. Plan A gets me there. Plan B is maybe, what I think I'm going to have is there, but plan C is where it gets really interesting, and D, E, F. That's where it gets.
Yeah, the most rewarding, when serendipity and all your instincts, all your skills lead up to this moment. And
Right.
Yeah, I was just there in Easter Island this spring before COVID shut us down. This is a stunning, stunning image. I love this image.
Yeah, and it's the confluence of being lucky because the horses were there, with going, okay, I can use this. I just gotta be slow and careful. But it's that confluence of serendipity and understanding of the possibility, right? And so now you can see I'm in 590, much more colorful, on the verge of, what is she doing? I mean, I've always felt if the processing gets in the way of the image, you have a problem. So I'm on that cusp with infrared, but I like working with these ultra colors. And I try to compose like I said, 100% in the frame. So I'm still working with this one. I wouldn't say this image is 100% finished for me. It's not a print yet, but I've done what's called swapping the channels, where you've seen in my earlier images, the skies were brownish, right? Well, I decided to make the skies blue here. I don't do that often. Many landscape photographers in infrared do that right away, but I have to pick and choose very, very carefully. But I chose to here because when I first did it with the sky being brown and the camels blue, it didn't really work very well. But for me, it was about the shadow and about the framing. And this has been a year's journey. A year's journey for me, understanding these more super saturated colors. So, of course, the Nemed Desert. I mean, so many photographers, rightly so, have been in Sassafras and Debflay with these camel thorn trees. And, how am I not going to make a cliche? It's so hard because it's a very small space and it's absolutely gorgeous. And I just went with the infrared, and I'm on a tripod, very low, like 2 inches from the ground, because it's really hard to see through these things. And so this one works for me, and where I kept, because it's so colorful, the infrared, it's that yellow, I just kept it. Actually, this is one of the few images that I haven't worked on that much, just a little bit, because I found the colors so intriguing and so different for this place. So I'm always trying to find something interesting in the ordinary and making the familiar new. And yeah, it's,
Beautiful.
I love it.
So making the ordinary new.
The familiar,
That's what-
ordinary, new, yeah.
And the second part of that?
Well, I'm
Oh,
trying to
you
find something interesting in the ordinary, and then I want to
that's a
make,
beautiful.
yeah.
That's great. That is such a great and simple phrase, that two-part, that embodies everything that you're doing. And I just love this. You know, you are blowing me away, quite honestly, with your work. And I thought I knew your work. This is great, great artistic. Yeah. And, you know, obviously, after the photos, let's talk for a minute before we
Okay.
leave.
Yeah,
we got
I'm almost done. There's a couple more I want to show you, but it's a similar to philosophy to what I have with my color images, where, you know, there's some great photographers, Jim Richardson, who said, if you want to make more interesting pictures, find more interesting subjects. Well, I have great subjects. Okay. Personally, I don't think there's such a thing as a boring subject. I think there's just very boring ways of photographing. Okay. But I fall in this other category of I have amazing subjects. And so my challenge is to make an extraordinary image out of these very interesting subjects. And I find it really, really hard, but that's, you know, what I'm trying to do. So coming back to Easter Island, and this is part of pre-visualizing what I can see in infrared, because personally, I'm standing on the ground and these are wimpy clouds, but I know in my head, because clouds are going to be extraordinary. Of course, composition is everything. It's about the clouds. It's about how puny we are as humans, because we are puny. And we have these great symbols and we do these amazing monuments, but in reality, the universe is so far beyond us. So I love this because as much as possible, I like to make us puny and or exalt us. I guess I like to go to both extremes. So in this case, I'm going to the puny, but the clouds, and I only in infrared. I know visible light is not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And this actually didn't require too much. Manipulation is not the word, it's processing. Because again, manipulation to me implies changing things. Processing means, you know, you're doing things post-processing. And as I mentioned before, personally, infrared requires a lot of post-processing. There's no doubt about it. And this is, yeah, go ahead.
I love this image, Hanuman. I've seen this. We have this. I love this image.
Thank you. And it's my most recent print. And when I make prints, you know, this is my gray room is back here. I like to make my own prints. I'm just like a detail person. I'm like, you know, little layers and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I want to sculpt my own prints. I learned that from Ansel Adams in the darkroom and on this minute level. So I'm not changing that much, just in very small ways. And I wasn't so sure at first. There's a strangeness and a beauty in IR, and it's a different kind of reality. But sometimes you don't realize it until I get involved in the post-processing. And I liked this image from the beginning. But then when I got involved, I was like, oh, this is really bringing out this magic of the Ramayana, which, as we know, is one of the epics of India. And this is a very small part of it. And this mini Hanuman, who is so cute, in a psalm behind, just a sheet is behind him. And yeah, it's turned out great as an image, and it's my most recent print.
It's also, you know, the Hanuman monkey god, as we call in India. This particular image, also in an interesting way, is a metaphor for seeing the invisible. You know, you have a mask, and you're also, you know, it's an interesting metaphor.
I didn't know that. I'll have to look that up. That's wonderful. That's fantastic. So I just have a couple of more because I didn't want to overwhelm you, but I want to go into the more
questions from the audience too, but go ahead. You know, I think
I'm almost done. I just have this one and one more. I'm almost done because I love this image. And again, with my eyes, it looks so different. but working with mirrorless, and again, if you're interested in the technical, this is not the place for it. We can talk about it in a seminar or workshop. But the more I photograph with infrared, the more I realize what I can do and what I can't do. But I'm always surprised and wowed by the unexpected. And sometimes an IR image is not truly revealed until the processing. And this was one of them. I wasn't so sure about it at first, but then when I started working with the blues and working with the ambers, and they're very true to form actually in many ways, but it's that sculpting quality of burning and dodging, which I do on mega and mostly minute ways. And the skin becomes very dark, so I have to lighten it down. When you work with color, it's a whole different thing. People with darker skins become too much blue, and I don't like that. So I have to bring it down. So I'm constantly working, and I'm doing, you know, different revisions and so on and so forth. But I love this image. But there's the post-processing, which you can get your head into. But this image, I get my heart into, because this is, you know, this is the way I used to be in the Grand Canyon. I was a Grand Canyon river guide, and I used to take my sarong into the river, and I just felt so free. And I don't know whether she did or not. I'm putting my head into it, but isn't that what we do with our photographs? We put our heart and our head into these images. And I really felt this, and I felt I was being respectful. Of course, they knew I was there. I never want to embarrass anyone. So this to me was respectful.
Just a couple of, you know, my personal point of view, when I saw this image too, when you, Nevada, shared this, and we put this up on Instagram as well. I think what I love about this, even beyond infrared, is it captures, you know, a beautiful moment, if you will, a decisive moment, you know, with dignity. You know, it does really well. I also see the grace in the woman's hands, because, you know, I come from India, so I know, you know, a thing or two about Indian women wearing saris and been to Banaras where they take a bath. But the gestures in her hands, you know, are just beautiful. It's almost like a dance movement. She's holding, you know, on one side, and then she's going to wrap herself soon. And then the metaphor between the folds of the sari and the ripples in the water is just very poetic.
Right. Totally. I'm sorry, Art, but you know, again, I'm close. I don't photograph with a telephoto lens. She knew I was there. If she had a problem with me, it would have been over. We were fine.
You know, I agree with Parimal, because I think the lines of the water and the lines of the sari are so beautifully combined. That's part of the thing that I see. And yeah, the modesty, the slight change of the head, everything about this. Yeah, I'm sure it's one of your favorite images. And it's all those subtle, very subtle things within that composition that work so beautifully well.
I mean, as we know, just a quarter of an inch can make so much difference, whether I move or somebody else does. As a photographer, you have to be aware of that. And of course, we have a lot of sketching, and again, so many failures, so many missed frames. But and I'm not just, you know, closing my eyes photographing. I'm just kind of hoping, you know, that I get the image. So I just have one more, and then we'll go to questions, because I found this one of the most difficult, because honestly, people think that photographing in bright sunlight works, but you have great contrast. And so I really struggled with this image, particularly making a print, because contrast can be your friend or it can be your enemy. And, you know, I grew up thinking there were rules in photography, and of course, aesthetic suggestions are recommended and honored indeed. But, you know, what I'm looking for is the whole gestalt. So for me, it's not the rules of composition. It's not this. I want a flow. I want the flow of light. I want the flow of color. I want the flow of moment. So for me, photography is not about rules. It's about flow. And it's about the whole gestalt of an image. And I love this image at first, but when I tried to translate it into a print, I found a lot of problems, and I had to work on a very almost microscopic level, on pixel level, trying to get rid of some of the problems with it that was technical. But I wanted to show the whole feeling of this. This was a funeral ritual, and I feel really honored to have been there. And they, I wouldn't say they embraced me. I would say they tolerated me. They were willing to let me be a part of it, and I was respectful. And so I worked really hard to make this image work, but I found a lot of technical problems with it that required a lot of work. So this is the last image I want to show you. So I'm gonna stop the share and we'll get to questions.
I don't think questions will come from us. Observations will come from me. I love the fact that you can cite Ouija and what was it, Siskin?
Yeah.
And these other artists. So you have a profound knowledge of history of photography, which I don't see in the younger generation of photographers. They're just kind of jumping in with good technology, and they've got their website and, you know, self-proclaimed, you know, the latest and greatest. Your history is there. Your knowledge of the history of photography is there. Your life and my life, I'll add nobly with you, we have given up our traditional families, you know, and life. We have passion, and I can just feel it reverberating when you're talking about your images. It just comes so clear that you have had and will have a great life, but you don't have a traditional life. You've given up for the creation and the happiness, and you're so enthusiastic. I just feel like we're so commensurate with each other. And with Chris Rainier a couple of days ago, I feel like I'm in a community of like-minded people. And that's my observation. And you are so powerfully strong in your vision. I thought I knew your work. I didn't know rat's ass about your work. Now I have a better feeling, and I'm so in awe of your vision and your daringness to use infrared, and you're just very bold and powerful in who you are and how you've lived your life. That's my comment.
Well said, Art.
Well, you know, can I say two things to that? One, you know, my work in the professional field of, I work for a newspaper in Santa Fe, I work for magazines, that was discipline. That taught me to, that whole take 10,000 images. It taught me to photograph and photograph and practice and practice. But I feel like I'm in a renaissance right now where I can work on my own projects. And, you know, to be honest, when I started working in photography, it was, the photo editors were like, they were the Great Barrier Reef of you shall pass or you shall not pass. You shall be this article and, you know, be involved. And now it's, you know, amateur is a bad word because it means the love of photography. And so people who love photography, you know, I mean, it doesn't matter how many articles you've published. If you have a vision and you have a passion and it's authentic, it's a strange word. I don't know, you know, you just know it when it happens, right? So I'm trying to get to that point in myself. And the one thing I love about photography is there's no Everest. You know, I was a mountain climber and there were always these peaks, and I gave it up because I realized what was at the bottom of the mountain was so much more interesting. But, you know, with photography, there is no Everest, there's no peak. And in digital, the form and what you can do with photography is so interesting, but you have to be authentic to yourself. You can't just, and that's why infrared is tricky, because it can be a gimmick, like black and white. If you don't like the color, just turn it to black and white. Well, if you're not sure what you're doing, turn it to infrared. So I've been trying to be very careful with it and trying to keep it very clear to my heart.
Lovely, well said. Would you be open to taking a few audience questions? I'm going to read them, pick a few from Facebook and YouTube. Would that be cool?
Of course.
Okay, question from, let's see, Lalit Deshmukh. Lalit, actually no Lalit. He's from Seattle, actually originally from India. Wow, great images, Nevada. I'm curious, does infrared provide you insight, allow you to present the feelings or the emotions that we usually don't see in the visible light, consisting of colors and tones?
Oh, wow. I'm not sure if I can completely answer that. I think it's two-part. Like I said, I love color. And to me, if an image is all about color, because I think color is very seductive and very potent. I think light, color, your subject, your gesture, so on is very important. But sometimes it goes beyond that. And so there are situations where I'll photograph it in visible light and actually it looks fabulous. Then I'll pick up my infrared camera and to be honest, it looks fabulous. So I can't really say because I still find infrared a mystery. When I think I have it figured out, the good news is I don't. So it's a constant learning situation for me.
Got it. Cool. Let's get one more, and then I have a question towards the end as well that Nevada, you and I spoke about. This is from Christopher Glenn. Nevada, tell us more about what you now look for to produce an image in IR. Is there something specific you look for to know that this is an IR image?
No, because you know, again, my world has been upended like everybody. I haven't been in one place this long since high school. So my world's been upended, but hopefully it won't be for too long. But I'm so used to going out in the world a priori and saying what's in front of me. I'm not planning things. I mean, yeah, I choose to go places, and I choose to go to a festival, whatever. But I work best when I have the uncertainty. And to be honest, I've been doing that in my own backyard because, like I said, there's no such thing as a boring subject. So I don't go out with an idea of what I'm going to get. To me, that doesn't make any sense. I'm going out with. I'm not a religious person. I'm a spiritual person, but I go out with awe. And what is interesting is how can it be rendered? You know, I mean, it's just this millisecond in time. I mean, all these photographs we have that are a whole lifetime. And if you really compress them, they come down to a few hours of our lifetime, right? So I'm looking for what compels me to say, take notice, take notice. And whether it's in visible light, which has certain properties to me, or whether it's an infrared that I'm still trying to demystify, it has certain properties to me, and I just make a choice.
That's well said. Thank you. Thank you. We have lots of questions, you know, obviously we won't have time for all those, but if someone is curious, Nevada, to learn more about infrared or to learn more about everything that you have learned, you know, over the decades, how would they, you know, kind of get in touch with you or maybe take a workshop? What's the best way for them to follow up and to learn more from you?
Well, finally, yay, because of COVID, I have a new website, Nevada Wier. And this is really important. You have to spell my last name correctly. It's because, you know, Bob Wier, Peter Wier, they're all the famous people. They're W-E-I-Rs. You cannot put a D at the end of my name. It's W-I-E-R. So NevadaWier.com. And I've been doing, because of COVID, I've been putting together these seminars for introduction. You don't have to have an infrared camera, but introductions to infrared. I just finished 3 of them. I'll probably offer some more in the fall. So go to my website and take a look. And then, of course, I have these new prints, and I have a new show coming up in January of 22. So if you want to print, now is the time because the prices are going to go up in January 1st.
Great. Well, that's good. And just to repeat, Nevada, W-I-E-R.
Well
So
done.
can I
Yes.
just, my last comment?
Yeah.
Nevada, you know, exemplifies the spirit of surviving in the age of COVID. She has produced a new website. She's working on her images. She's going to look back in years from now and say, this is because of COVID, in a positive way. You know, and the people that piss and moan about everything are the people that are going to piss and moan about everything in the future. But you look back and you say, this is because of that. It's all positive. You can see in her radiance that she's lived a life of creativity, exploration. She looks way younger than her 95 years.
Oh, you got it.
You
Well,
know,
go ahead. Sorry.
I just want to finish. I'm so admiring you, and you and I have lived very similar lives. And I'm very positive. You're extraordinarily positive. It's been a delight to see your work and hear your stories. Happy, happy, happy.
Thank you. And everyone should have art in their lives, like two-way speaking.
Yeah, I want to end, Navara, on this one last question that we ask everyone before we end tonight's show.
Yeah.
Having been in your shoes and the world you have seen and the experiences you have had, if you had, if you will, one message for us all, either as photographers or people or humanity, what would you say and why?
Like I just said before, everyone should have art in their lives. And I don't just mean you, Art, even though that's true. I think everyone has to pursue a creative point of view. And honestly, for me, I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't do poetry, I can't play the guitar, I can't paint. Photography, was my conduit. And I think it's, creativity is part of the human spirit.
Love that. Love that. Love that. Well, Navara, thank you so much. It's wonderful. I want to thank our audiences as well, for the continued support. Everyone joining us today, please do share. The more people hear about this, the better for, Navara, Art, all of us. We do want to share, the creative pursuit for what it is to be human with more people. And Art, again, thanks again for the great wisdom you bring here as on a regular basis. And with that, I want to thank you all, and happy Thursday, and have a great weekend coming up soon.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.